So I was explaining you about predicate logic, right? So predicate logic, why we actually switched over to predicate logic, that was what we discussed in the last class, that propositional logic could not consider the structure of the knowledge representation. So that is why we moved on to predicate logic. So predicate logic, we studied different representations for predicate logic, and we were actually studying this set of facts and how to convert it into a predicate logic representation. So for the first sentence, Marcus was a man. The representation is simple, right? You can just write man of Marcus. So basically whatever is the object of that sentence, that becomes your predicate, and the instance of that object, that becomes your argument, right? So that is how you get this man Marcus. So now your second sentence is Marcus was a Pompeian. So Pompeian is the object. So your representation becomes Pompeian bracket Marcus, right? Then you have the third sentence, all Pompeians were Romans, right? So basically you will have this kind of a representation. So here it is a bit different because you will have to use a universal quantifier for every. So for all x, you represent it by this V kind of a symbol with a straight line in between. So that stands for a universal quantifier. So the universal quantifier meaning is that for all x such that if x is a Pompeian, this implies that x is a Roman. So this is the representation of all Pompeians were Romans. Because if you say any x which is a Pompeian, this will imply that that x is a Roman also. So that's how we have represented it in predicate logic. Because so here it is coming all Pompeians. So wherever the words all comes or there exists comes, we have to use the quantifiers, right? So basically the for all is basically a universal quantifier. You represent it by this V shape. And if you want to represent the words there exist, then you use the existential quantifier. So that is a T kind of a symbol that we had studied in the last class, right? So this is the representation for the third sentence. And then Caesar was a ruler. So Caesar is the so ruler is the object. Caesar is the instance of that object. So you will have the representation ruler bracket Caesar, right? Then the fifth one is a little tricky. All Romans were either loyal to Caesar or hated him, right? So for every x such that x is a Roman, this will imply that x is either loyal to Caesar or x hates Caesar, right? Like this we can convert it into predicate logic representation, correct? So this is how we do it. For every x such that x is a Roman, this implies that x is loyal to Caesar. So loyal to is basically what we have taken as a predicate, and it has got two you can say two arguments. So one is the subject and the other is the object. So you say x was either loyal to Caesar or x hated him, right? So your x is the subject, Caesar is your object, and your verb becomes your predicate. Okay, so loyal to is your verb, so that becomes your predicate. So in case your complete sentence is there in which there is a subject and an object, in that case your verb becomes the predicate. Okay, so that is how we get this. So this for every x such that x is a Roman, this implies that x is loyal to Caesar or x hates Caesar. So that is why loyal to x comma Caesar and then or sign. So this is the or sign. It is also called as disjunction. Okay, so this symbol which is a V, it is basically yeah, in the fourth sentence also we have omitted the tense information. So basically we don't have the tense information. Predicate logic is also not that much sophisticated, but yes, obviously we have considered the structure of the representation. So that in that case, predicate logic is more sophisticated. Why? Because if you see the previous example which I gave in the last class, so if you see here, if you represent Socrates as a man and Plato is a man in propositional logic, both will be represented like this: Socrates man, Plato man. So you can't actually find out that both are similar sentences. I mean, they are both men. So that similarity or that representation you cannot capture, that both are actually indicating men. But in predicate logic, you write man in the predicate and Socrates and Plato in the arguments. So just by changing the argument, you can get Plato, right? So you understand that both have a similarity, that they are men, and they are instances of men. So there are different instances of men. One is the name is Socrates, other name is Plato. So that's how it is more sophisticated, because it has predicates and arguments. So predicates can represent the similarity between the sentences. Okay, so in that sense we are saying. So now we were here on the fifth sentence. All Romans were either loyal to Caesar or hated him. So this is what how you'll represent it. For every x such that x is the Roman implies that x is loyal to Caesar, or this is the or symbol, right? This V is the or symbol. It is also called as disjunction. Okay, this or disjunction, and when you write an and, that means a caret sign like this. If you write a caret sign like this, it is basically and that is also called as conjunction. Fine. So V is basically disjunction, and it is also called as or. Fine. Disjunction. S is missing, disjunction it is. And that caret sign, basically the opposite V, I mean the upside down V, that is called as a conjunction or an and. Fine. So you have here loyal to x comma Caesar. Why? Because if there is in a sentence subject and an object and a verb also, then verb comes as a predicate, and subject and object becomes the two arguments of that predicate. Okay, that's how you get this. So now this is one representation of this sentence. Another representation could be, so if you see in the fifth sentence, I have written an or, and then I have given a second representation also, right? So what is that second representation? For because you can actually interpret this sentence in different ways, right? So one other way in which you could interpret this sentence is that for every x such that x is Roman implies that x is loyal to Caesar or x is hating Caesar, and if x is not loyal to Caesar, then definitely he is hating Caesar. So that extra information, that extra condition you have put in a and sign. So this first part after implies in the right hand side, the first part is same, the second part is different. So first part says x is loyal to Caesar or x hates Caesar. The second part says if x is basically second part says not loyal to x comma Caesar. So x is not loyal to Caesar and x is hating Caesar. So both are occurring together. This means that x is not loyal to Caesar and x hates Caesar. So this means definitely he's hating Caesar because he's not loyal to Caesar. Okay, so basically you have created this extra information here just to represent the possibility that if x is not loyal to Caesar, then definitely he is hating Caesar. So that is why you have put this extra information after as a second part of this right hand side. Okay, so for every x such that x is Roman, this will imply that x is either loyal to Caesar or x hates Caesar, and x is not loyal to Caesar and x hates Caesar. So this will mean that basically x is not loyal to Caesar, and that is a simultaneous event with x hating Caesar. So that is another extra information which you can represent. Why? Because your sentence can be interpreted in different ways, right? Because it's a natural language sentence. The sentence is that all Romans who were loyal are either loyal to Caesar or hate him, right? So that means if someone is not loyal to, then definitely he's hating him. So that information also we have captured in the second option. So that fifth sentence can have actually two predicate logic representations. Are you getting this, students? But actually the first one is more natural representation, but the second one is also one extra information we are capturing in the second representation. Are you getting this, all of you? Any doubts? Please ask. Is it okay? What about others? Only one response from Nitin. What about others? Okay, fine. So then let's move on to the next sentence. Everyone is loyal to someone, right? The sixth sentence. Everyone is loyal to someone. So this is easy actually. Everyone is loyal to someone means for every x, there exists some y such that x is loyal to y, right? So actually here also two representations could be there. For every x, there is some y such that x is loyal to that y, right? Or otherwise, there exists some y for every x such that x is loyal to y. So actually you can reverse this for every x and there exists y in two ways. So the meaning will be different. If you take it in the reverse way, the meaning will be different. So one way is for every x there exists some y such that x is loyal to y. So this will mean that there is a y for every x. Okay, so there is a person for every x. So that means every x is loyal to some y. Okay, so for every different individual, some person, some other individual exists for whom he is loyal to, right? But what the second representation says, there exists some y for every x, right? So this meaning is different here. The meaning is that there is one individual only, which is y, and every x is loyal to that y. Okay, so there exists some particular individual y for every x. So for all the individuals which are x, there exists one y for whom they are loyal to. Okay, so these two representations have different meanings. Are you able to understand the different meaning, students? The first sentence, the first representation says that for every x you have some y. Okay, so that means if x is the first individual, it has some other individual to whom he is loyal. Then the second individual is their x, then it has some another y for whom he is loyal, right? So this is the first representation. In the second representation, it means that there exists a single y for every x and every x is loyal to that y. Okay, are you getting this, students? The two different representations, and both are representing this sentence. Both are representing this sentence that everyone is loyal to someone, because this sentence can have two different meanings. It can have the meaning that everyone is loyal to some unique y, or it can have a meaning that everyone is loyal to some different y. Are you getting why two representations? Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Then the next sentence. So people, seventh one. The people only try to assassinate rulers they are not loyal to. Okay, so people only try to assassinate rulers they are not loyal to. So let us try to represent this. So for every x, for every y, such that x is a person, because you have written here people. So that means x is a person, right? And y is a ruler, right? And x has tried to assassinate the ruler. So this will imply that he is not loyal to that ruler, right? You can represent it like this. So if x is a person, y is a ruler, and x has tried to assassinate this ruler, so this means that x is not loyal to ruler, right? So for every x, for every y, such that x is a person and y is a ruler, and try assassinate x comma y. Try assassinate is your verb, right? So try assassinate we have written as a predicate, and x and y become your subject and object, right? So they are becoming your two arguments of this predicate. So if x is a person and y is a ruler and x has tried to assassinate ruler, right? So for every x, for every y, if x is a person and y is a ruler and x has tried to assassinate y, this would imply that x is not loyal to y, right? Are you able to get it, students, how we came to this representation? So if x is a person, y is a ruler, x has tried to assassinate the ruler, that means y. So it will imply that x is not loyal to y, right? But here also there is one ambiguity actually. The ambiguity is that people would try to assassinate all those rulers they are not loyal to. So this would mean that this would have another representation also. It could have actually. Because in this representation, we are actually capturing the meaning that if he has tried to assassinate, then he is not loyal to, right? But it could be interpreted in a different way also. That different way could be that if he is basically not loyal to somebody, then he will try to assassinate him. So in that case, you will have a different representation. So this sentence again has an ambiguity that people try to assassinate all those rulers they are not loyal to. So that means if he is not loyal to, he will try to assassinate him, right? So this sentence, people only try to assassinate rulers they are not loyal to. So this can be interpreted like this, that the only thing that that person will do is try to assassinate him because he is not loyal to him, right? So this could also be another representation. So one representation we have taken, that is a natural representation, that if he has tried to assassinate, then he is not loyal to, right? But the other way around could be that if he is not loyal to, he will try to assassinate him. So in that case, it will be like person X intersection ruler Y intersection not loyal to X comma Y implies try assassinate X comma Y. So they will be actually exchanged. Try assassinate and not loyal to will be exchanging their positions. Are you able to get this, students? Why there is an ambiguity in this sentence? See, in this representation, the meaning is that if he is trying to assassinate, this implies that he is not loyal to. But other meaning could be if he is not loyal to, then he is trying to assassinate. That means all the thing which a person is doing, if he is not loyal to, is assassinating only. So that means if a person is not loyal to someone, he will assassinate that person. So that could also be the meaning of this sentence. That is why we could have a second representation also. Are you able to get this? Why there is an ambiguity here also? Getting the students? Okay. Seventh is clear. I'll go to the sixth again. Seventh one is clear, students. Why there is an ambiguity? Okay, so one student is asking to explain the sixth one again. So the sixth one is, or everyone is loyal to someone, right? So everyone is loyal to someone means that for every X there should be some Y for which X is loyal to Y. So that's what we have represented. For every X there exists some Y such that X is loyal to the individuals, there exist some individuals to whom they are loyal to, right? So for the first individual, there might be some A. For the second individual, there might be some B. For the third individual, there might be some C. And they are loyal to these ABCs individually, right? So basically, there could be multiple Ys for multiple X's for whom they are loyal to. In the second representation, the meaning is different. The second representation says there exists some Y for every X, right? So in this case, there exists a unique Y and every X is loyal to that Y. Okay, so that is what is the difference. In the first representation, there are multiple Ys. In the second representation, there is only one Y for which all X's are loyal to. So that is the different representations, and both are actually capturing the same sentence only, because a sentence can have these two different meanings. Yeah, so it would be someone is loyal to everyone. Someone is loyal to everyone. No, everyone is loyal to someone. See, for all X, there exists some Y. See, what is the sentence? Sentence is everyone is loyal to someone, right? Everyone is loyal to someone means that there could be a unique someone also, or there could be a different someone also for everyone. So that is why this sentence can have two representations. We could have different representations. But can't you say that if everyone is loyal to someone, that someone we don't know, that someone is a unique someone or that is a different someone for everyone? That is why I'm saying it can have two representations. So what is your case? It would be someone is loyal to everyone. Someone is loyal to everyone means no. In that case, it is that person is loyal. It is in, see, Nitin, in your case, you have a unique X, but I am talking about a unique Y. Okay, so in your case, you have a X which is loyal to all Ys, right? But that is not that is not what we want to represent. We want to represent that there are multiple X's and there is a unique Y, and every X is loyal to that unique Y. That is what is the second representation here. The second representation is for basically for every there exists a Y for every X, so they are actually loyal to a unique Y. So what is the confusion, Nitin? Are you getting? Yeah. Okay, fine. So sixth one we have done and seventh one also we have done. Seventh one is also okay, students. Are you able to get that what is the ambiguity in the seventh one? Please confirm to me, then I will proceed. Okay. Apart from Nitin, all others, are you able to get seventh one? Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So the last one is, so then we go for the last one. Marcus tried to assassinate Caesar. Right? So this is simple because trying assassinating is a verb and Marcus and Caesar are subject and object. So they'll become your predicate, would become your verb, and the subject and object would become the arguments. So you'll have try assassinate Marcus comma Caesar like this. Fine. So this is what is how you convert into predicate logic representation. Fine. Now let us try to answer a question. So the question based on the certain set of facts in predicate logic representation, let us try to answer this question. Was Marcus loyal to Caesar? Okay. So this is our question. Was Marcus loyal to Caesar? So what we do is from this set of facts, we have to prove this. Okay. So let us try to begin with not loyal to. Okay, so we take the negation of this. So Marcus was loyal to Caesar, so loyal, not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar, and we are trying to begin with the negation of this, and we are trying to prove that it is false or true. So if it is actually true, that means Marcus was not loyal to Caesar, and if it produces a false, that means Marcus was loyal to Caesar. Fine. So we generally what we do is whatever we want to prove, we begin with the negation of that and use substitution to prove it true or false. So let us begin. Not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar. So basically what we will do is we will substitute this so this should be existing as a right hand side in any of the facts, and we will substitute it by the left hand side so that we are able to reach some fact which is already existing. So if we are able to reach a fact which is already existing, then we can say that that fact is true. So that means this statement is true. So let us start. Not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar. So if you see in your set of facts, not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar. If you see the seventh one, so just see which fact can actually lead us towards the solution. We basically want to derive a true or a false condition. Okay, so you have to basically reduce this fact which you want to prove to a true or a false. So you have to basically substitute it by the left hand side facts in such a way that basically all those facts reduce to a true or a false. So how they will reduce to a true or a false? They will be basically some facts which are already existing, and that is why you know that they are true. So like this, you can prove that your starting fact from where you started, that is also true. Fine. So what we do is by substitution, if you replace, so you want to prove here, not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar, right? So Marcus, if you replace by X, and Caesar, if you replace, if you see here, you want to substitute it by the left hand side in the seventh one, right? So what you have to make the substitution, because they are not equal. It is not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar, and here it is not loyal to X comma Y. So you have to replace X by Marcus and Y by Caesar. Then only you will get the right hand side of this seventh fact equal to this proof which you want to do, right? Then only you can make the substitution. Otherwise you cannot make the substitution. Correct? So you replace X by Marcus and Y by Caesar in this complete fact, and then you replace the right hand side by the left hand side, right? Because if this left hand side exists, then only the right hand side exists. So that means you can replace the right hand side by the LHS. Fine. So, and you have to make the constant substitution in the complete fact. So in all the fact in the LHS as well as in the RHS, you have to replace X and Y. So X will become Marcus, Y will become Caesar. Fine. So that means what you will get finally after substituting person Marcus. See, the fact is person X, right? Intersection ruler Y, intersection try assassinate X comma Y. Correct. So that means your fact would become person Marcus intersection ruler Caesar intersection try assassinate Marcus comma Caesar, right? That's what we do. So that's what we have done in this step. Person Marcus intersection ruler Caesar intersection try assassinate Marcus comma Caesar, right? So basically you have to find out some substitution which can make the right hand side of some fact equal to this particular fact which you are trying to substitute. Okay, so you got these three facts from this previous fact. fact, not loyal to Marcus, Caesar. Basically, whatever expression you want to prove, you have reduced it by substitution to this expression. Fine. So you got this predicate logic representation. Now you want to prove it as a true or a false. So again, you have to see whether it exists in your set of facts as a true, then it will be satisfied automatically. Fine. If it is not existing, then you will find that whether it is existing as the right hand side of some fact, then you will replace it by the left hand side. Fine. So you have now three expressions to prove: person Marcus, ruler Caesar, and try assassinate Marcus, Caesar. Fine. So now, if you see your database of facts, ruler Caesar is already existing as a fact, right? So that means it is true. Ruler Caesar is a ruler. That is an established fact because it's already existing. So that means it is true. So that means you can just substitute it by the fourth rule, and you can just, because it will become true. So anything intersection with true will be the same thing, right? So person Marcus intersection true intersection try assassinate Marcus, Caesar. So that is why we can just leave this expression ruler Caesar because it's already proved true. So you will get person Marcus intersection try assassinate Marcus, Caesar. Are you getting this, students? How you got person Marcus intersection try assassinate Marcus, Caesar? Because ruler Caesar is already an established fact. So it's true, right? Getting or not? So then we'll move on to prove the second thing also. Try assassinate. Substitution is clear. No. See, anything intersection with true is the same thing. So it's not that anything intersection with true is not true. Anything intersection with true is the same thing. So A intersection with true is A, basically. Okay, Nitin? Please remember, you have done this in the set theory. Set theory, you might have done this. Anything intersection with true is equal to the same thing. Okay? Please see the chat box. Right? Okay. So anything intersection with true is the same thing. So that is why you just leave this ruler Caesar because it's already proved true. So now you are left with only two expressions. Person Marcus intersection try assassinate Marcus, Caesar. So after the fourth substitution, you got these two expressions left. Now, if you see here, try assassinate Marcus, Caesar, that is also a fact because it's existing as a fact in your database, right? So that means Marcus tried to assassinate Caesar. That is a true thing, right? So that means this is also an established fact, so it is also true. So that means this also you can leave. So this will also be cancelled. Basically, it will be gone. Why? Because it will be true. So you are able to satisfy this goal, this sub goal also. You can say that these are three sub goals, and you are trying to satisfy each of these sub goals one by one, right? So ruler Caesar you have satisfied because it exists as a fourth rule. Then the try assassinate Marcus, Caesar, that exists as your eighth rule. So that is also satisfied. Now you are left with person Marcus, right? So is person Marcus existing in your database of facts? Just see your database of facts. Is person Marcus existing or not? Can anybody tell me? No, you have man Marcus, but you don't have person Marcus, right? So basically, it is the deficiency in the predicate logic representation that it does not take into account the obvious facts. So the obvious fact is that all men are people, right? So if Marcus is a man, definitely he is a person, but that is not represented here. So you will need to add one more fact. That is a deficiency of predicate logic. It cannot take into account the obvious things. So you have to specify explicitly. So that is why in order to prove this question, we have to add one more fact that all men are people. So if you add this fact, you have to convert this into predicate logic also. So for every x says that x is a man implies that x is a person. Fine. So if you write like this, then that means that if he is a man, he is a person also. So in that case, you can derive an extra fact that man Marcus implies person Marcus, right? So from person Marcus, you will be able to reduce it to man Marcus by making the substitution from the first rule. So the first rule is basically man Marcus, sorry, that extra rule, from that extra rule. So that extra rule is for every x, man x implies person x. So you replace x by Marcus, so you'll get man Marcus implies person Marcus. So now you can substitute using this rule. Person Marcus, you can substitute it by man Marcus, and man Marcus is already there as a fact, so that will be true. So like this, you will be able to prove that this finally leads to a true. So if it is finally leading to a true, that means not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar is true. So your answer to the question is Marcus was not loyal to Caesar. Fine. So basically here there was an obvious fact which was missing, that all men are people. So you have to add that fact in order to prove this. So that is also one deficiency of predicate logic, that it cannot take the obvious facts into consideration. Fine. Are you able to get this, students, how we generated the proof by substitution method? All of you are getting? Say yes or no. Uh, what about others apart from Nitin? What about others? Please respond. Okay, Pranshu, Shashikant, Samik. Okay, okay, fine. Okay, that's good. Fine. So, students here, yeah. So, students here, one thing to note is that if there is an obvious fact which is absent, you have to add that fact in order to prove the sentences by predicate logic. If this fact was also present, then definitely your answer would be there without adding any fact. So, you will get that as true. Like this, you prove it by substitution method. So, basically, you conclude. So, there are two conclusions over here, that many English sentences are ambiguous, right? So choosing the correct interpretation may be difficult. So representation depends upon how you interpret it, right? So that is why in this representation of predicate logic, I have basically told you in this fifth sentence that you can have two representation. In the sixth one also you can have two representations. In the seventh one also you can have two representations, right? So that was why, because each sentence can be interpreted differently by different people. So that is the conclusion, that there is an ambiguity in sentences, and because of which your interpretations could change. Fine. And then a set of sentences is unlikely to contain all the necessary information. So you require to add some facts that are obvious to people. So sometimes you don't know that an obvious fact is absent. So you'll need to add the obvious fact. Like you have added here, all men are people. Right? So some obvious information may be missing, which you need to add it in predicate logic. And the third thing is which direction you want to proceed. You want to prove loyal to Marcus comma Caesar, or you want to prove not loyal to Marcus comma Caesar. So generally what we do is we negate the statement, and we prove that the negation is true. So what or other option is, we use some heuristic function which can estimate the correct answer, and then we try to prove that answer. So using some heuristics, we will get an estimate that what will be the correct answer. Marcus is loyal to, or Marcus is not loyal to Caesar. So if you get that Marcus might be not loyal to Caesar, so you will basically start proving not loyal to. Okay, so this is one thing which we will not go into very deep, but actually generally we start with the negation of the statement and we try to prove it. The negation is true or false, right? But there is one other option also, that you can use a heuristic function to estimate that which would be the answer, and then you try to prove that answer only. So if your heuristic function returns that loyal to would be the answer, then you try to prove loyal to by the substitution method that it is true. Otherwise, you try to prove not loyal to is true. So that is one other option which is generally which could be also used. And generally we do a backward reasoning. So we start from the fact which we want to prove, I mean the expression which we want to prove, and we try to prove it true or false in the backward direction. So we replace the RHS by the LHS by the substitution method, and until we reach a true or a false. We go on doing like this until we reach a true or a false. So this is basically how do we do proofs in predicate logic. Is it okay, students? Are you able to get up till now? Are you able to get all of you? Please respond. Then I'll proceed further. Getting? Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So then, yeah. So till now we have done unary predicate logic. So whatever we were doing was, it is called as unary predicate logic. Okay. The other could be binary predicate logic. So in the binary predicate logic, we also use instance and either relationships, or you can say instance or either predicates. Okay, so this is just a way of converting from unary to binary. What we do is, we use another predicate which we call as an instance predicate and an is-a predicate. Okay, so in the instance and is-a predicate, we always have two arguments, right? For example, in your previous sentence representation, you had man of Marcus, right? So man Marcus, it's having only one argument, correct? But in the binary predicate logic, you use instance of man Marcus comma man. So this becomes binary predicate logic because it has got two arguments. So whenever you use instance and is-a predicates, they will always have two arguments. So they are called as binary predicate logic. So every sentence you can basically represent using instance and is-a relationships. Okay. Or is-a predicate and instance predicate. And then it will have two arguments. That is why it is called as binary predicate logic. So let us see how these two sentences are equivalent. So Marcus is a man. So we represent man bracket Marcus, right? The same thing you can also represent like this: instance Marcus comma man. So basically, your instance has got two objects, arguments. The first argument is basically your Marcus is the instance of the object, and man is basically that object whose instance it is. So basically, instance Marcus comma man. This means that Marcus is an instance of man. Okay, so instance is another predicate which you can which you can use, which takes two arguments. The first argument is the instance of that object, the second argument is that object of whom instance it is. So this means Marcus is an instance of man. Similarly, if you want to represent Pompey and Marcus, so you can write like this: instance Marcus comma Pompey. So this means Marcus is an instance of Pompey. Okay, so it was a very simple representation that we were using, Pompey and Marcus. Right. It was also saying the same thing, that Marcus is a Pompeian. But if you want to represent using instance and is-a relationships, then you will represent it like this with two arguments: instance, then bracket, then the instance, comma the object. Okay, this is just another representation which is having two arguments, so we call it as binary predicate logic. Now the third sentence, if you want to convert it using binary predicate logic, so the third sentence is for every x such that Pompeian x implies Roman x, right? So you can write it like this: for every x such that x is an instance of Pompeian implies that x is an instance of Roman, right? So this will actually capture the same thing which you want to represent. So for every x such that x is a Pompeian implies x is Roman. So you can use you have to convert the normal sentence into the instance predicate sentence. So you can write that x is an instance of Pompeian implies that x is an instance of Roman. That's a conversion into binary logic. Then ruler Caesar, simple, instance Caesar comma ruler. So basically Caesar is an instance of ruler. Write this. Then the last one, for every x, Roman x implies x is loyal to Caesar or x is hating Caesar. So for if you convert it into binary logic, so it will be for every x such that x is an instance of Roman. This would imply that x is loyal to Caesar or x is hating Caesar. Why? Because x is an instance of Roman. So this would imply that x is hating say Caesar or x is loyal to Caesar, right? So the fifth sentence, your x is an instance of Roman. This would imply that x is hating Caesar or x is loyal to Caesar, right? So that is how you convert the fifth sentence. So for all the for other sentences, if you see, for every x says that x is an instance of Pompeian implies x is an instance of Roman. This is for the third sentence. So this is how you have converted. So basically, this is the binary predicate logic using instance relationships, and you can have using is-a also. Are you able to get this? How we have converted into instance just using an extra predicate, instance predicate, and it will always have two arguments. Are you getting this? How do you convert unary to binary logic? Okay, fine. So then you can use either relationship also. So either relationship is not possible in every sentence, but in some sentences it might be possible. So basically, either relationship is basically for capturing the class. It's basically for capturing the class inclusion, right? I have discussed this in the types of knowledge in the last class also. What is either relationship? It is basically a class inclusion, right? And instance is basically a class membership. Okay, so instance is a class membership, isa is a class inclusion, right? So instance is a class membership. So Marcus is a man, that means Marcus is an instance of this object man. So Marcus is basically a member of man class, right? Similarly, second sentence is Pompey and Marcus, so that means Marcus is a basically member of the Pompeian class, like this. So now if you want a class inclusion, that cannot be for every sentence, only for the third one, I think. So if you see, all Pompeians are Romans. So this is a class inclusion kind of a sentence, right? Because Pompeians are included in Romans. This means this thing, that if he's a Pompeian, he's a Roman. So you can represent it using is a relationship. So is a bracket Pompeian comma Roman. So this means that Pompeian is the Roman. So this is a simple way of representing the sentence, which you represented it through a long expression. So if you see, the long expression was, for every x instance x comma Pompeian implies instance x comma Roman. You can replace this long sentence into a shorter one just by using the is a relationship. So this is a predicate would be having Pompeian comma Roman. This would mean that all Pompeians, if he's a Pompeian, he's a Roman. So this is a simple way of representing using is a. Similarly, okay, so this is only one case where you could actually use a is a relationship, right? Others you cannot use because there is no class inclusion kind of a structure in any other sentence. In the third one, there was a class inclusion kind of a information, so you could represent it using is a relationship. And you could also add one extra fact over here. Just see the last expression. We have added the sixth fact, that for every x, for every y, for every z, such that x is an instance of y and y is z. So basically, x is a member of the class y and y is basically included in z. So that means x is also an instance of z, right? Just see the last sentence here, students. So if x is an instance of y and y is basically included in the class z, because y is z. Okay, so all y's are z basically. So if x is an instance of y and all y's are z, then that means x is also an instance of z, right? So that is what we have captured in the last sentence. And this is an important thing because you need to understand the relationship between instance and is-a predicates. So this is the relationship. So if you have two objects like x and y, I mean x is an instance of the object y and y is belonging to z. So it would definitely imply that x is also belonging to z, right? Are you able to get this last representation, students? Why we have added this? Just to establish a relationship between instance and is-a predicates. Are you getting the last one? So basically this one is just to tell you that if x is an instance of y and y is included in the class z, then x is also an instance of z. So if basically you can take some example also. For example, if I want to say that Marcus is a Pompeian and all Pompeians are Romans, then I can say that Marcus is a Roman also. So from this last representation, I can get that, right? So Marcus is an instance of Pompeian and all Pompeians are Romans. So that will imply that Marcus is an instance of Roman also. So in order to get that important inference, so that important inference is that Marcus is a Roman also, right? So in order to get that important inference from this binary logic, you have to add this last fact. So x is an instance of y and y is z implies x is also z. So if x means Marcus, let us say x is Marcus, y is Pompeian. So instance Marcus comma Pompeian intersection is a Pompeian comma Roman implies instance Marcus comma Roman. So this will mean that Marcus is an instance of Roman, like this. So this is how you represent the unary predicate logic in binary form using instance and is relationships, but they are often not used. We often use the unary predicate logic only in general sense, but this is also one thing which we could do. So that is why this is also one thing which we should study, but we generally don't use the binary logic representation. Then we come to computable functions and predicates. So up till now, what we have studied is a normal predicate. You can have a computable predicate also, right? For example, you can have a predicate greater than, GT means greater than, and 2 plus 3 comma 1. So this will have two arguments, 2 plus 3 comma 1, and this is called a computable predicate because it can actually compute the values. Okay, so you can actually capture the greater than and less than relationships in a computable predicate. That is one thing. Other thing is it can compute the values. Okay, so here it can compute 2 plus 3 and it can generate a 5, and then it can find out that 5 is greater than 1, so it will give an answer as true. So it is called as a computable predicate. Why? Because it is able to compute that whether 5 is greater than 1 or not. So 5 is greater than 1. So in that case, it will return a true. Okay. So GT means greater than, like, so it is basically capturing the greater than relationship. You can also have a less than relationship. So in that case, you will be basically using another predicate symbol for less than, and it will be able to capture that whether it is the first argument is less than the second argument or not. And accordingly, it will generate the answer as true or false. So here 5 is greater than 1. So it will generate true. This is called as a computable predicate which can compute its value. So let us use these computable predicates and try to convert it into a predicate logic representation. Right? Just 1 minute, students, and we will try to convert all these sentences into predicate logic. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah. Students, can you hear me? Okay, fine. So let us continue. Uh, Fine. So Marcus was a man. The same. So I'm taking some different set of facts now. Marcus was a man. Simply man. Marcus would be the representation. Then Marcus was a Pompeian. So its representation would be Pompeian Marcus. Then the third fact is Marcus was born in 40 AD. Okay. So 40 AD is basically your object. Marcus is your subject, and born is your verb. So born Marcus, comma 40. Okay, so that becomes your predicate logic representation for the third one. Then all men are mortal. The fourth fact is all men are mortal. So for every x such that x is a man, this would imply that x is mortal. Right? This is a simple representation, the same way which we did for the sentence like all Pompeians are Romans. Similar is this sentence, all men are mortal. So for every x such that x is a man, this would imply that x is mortal. Right? This is also simple. Now you see the fifth sentence. I'll just enlarge this. I think it is less visible. Uh, okay. So just see the sentence now here, students. All Pompeians died when the volcano erupted in 79 AD. Okay, so here it means that there are two events actually. Volcano erupted in 79 AD, that is one event. Other event is Pompeians died in 79 AD, right? But actually we don't know that whether the Pompeians died because the volcano erupted in 79 AD. That is not there. We have not got that information. It is only written that all Pompeians died when the volcano erupted in 79 AD. But this is through our common sense that we know that it was a natural disaster and that is why they died. This is through our common sense that we know that because of the volcano only people die, right? But it is not written over here. So that is why you have here two facts. One thing is that the volcano erupted in 79 AD. Other thing is that if he was a Pompeian, then he died in 79 AD. Fine, because we don't know that whether he died because of volcano. That is not there, right? So that information we can't represent because it is not given over here. So that is why we have the predicate logic representation. You can say you have two facts from this fact. One fact is that the volcano erupted in 79 AD. So erupted is a verb, so it becomes your predicate, right? And then volcano and 79 AD, they are your subject and object. So volcano becomes your subject and 79 AD becomes your object. So that's how you get this representation like erupted volcano comma 79. So this is one event, right? Other event is for every X, I mean all Pompeians have died in 79 AD, right? So we want to represent that thing also. So that is a representation like for every X such that X is a Pompeian. So this will imply that X died in 79 AD. Okay, so if he was a Pompeian, he has died. And when he has died in 79 AD, right? So both the events have occurred in 79 AD, but are those events related to each other? That we are not confirmed because it's not given. So we will consider them as independent events only. So for every X such that X is a Pompeian, this implies that died X comma 79. Why? So you can represent, so basically it would be that sentence, it could be represented as a sentence, all Pompeians died in 79 AD, right? So you're trying to basically represent that sentence, that all Pompeians died in 79 AD. So for every X such that X is a Pompeian, this implies that X has died in 79 AD. So died is a verb, so it will come as a predicate, and X and 79 AD are the subject and object. So like this you got died X comma 79. Fine. Now, here, one thing to note here, which is very important, is that they are two different events, right? So basically, you have two separate facts. One fact is volcano erupted in 79 AD. Other fact is Pompeians died in 79 AD. You are not considering them as dependent events. They are independent events. So you can consider them as two different facts also, right? So these two things happen together. So you can say that erupted volcano comma 79 intersection with for every X Pompeian X implies died X comma 79. So basically these two events have, both of them have occurred. So that is why an intersection sign. Intersection signs mean and intersection means and, right? So this is the events which have occurred together, both of them have occurred, so intersection sign. But actually they are two separate facts existing, right? So you can consider this as a fifth fact, erupted one, and then for every X, that part, the second part you can consider as another fact. Okay. So basically, if you have two expressions and an intersection sign in between, that means both the expressions are true. Both the expressions have occurred, right? So basically, those can be considered as independent expressions while you are doing the substitutions to prove something, right? So this erupted is one expression, and this for every X Pompeian X implies died, that is another expression, and both are true, right? So they are existing in your set of facts. That's how you get the fifth one. And then the seventh fact is no bottle lives longer than 150 years. So this is a sentence which you want to represent, and here comes the role of, so here is the role of computable predicates, because you have to compute whether the present year is greater than 150 years. I mean 150 years have gone. So suppose X is a mortal, right? So suppose X is a mortal and X was born at the time T1, right? and time t2 minus t1 is greater than 150. So that means that x is died at the time t2. Right? So let me explain it again. See, for every x, for every t1, for every t2. So what you have considered? You have considered two time instants, t1 and t2. Right? And x is the mortal. So for every x, for every t1, for every t2, such that x is a mortal, fine, and x is born at time instant t1, right? And time instant t2 minus t1 is greater than 150 because you have written gt bracket t2 minus t1 comma 150. So that means the time difference between t2 minus t1 is greater than 150. So that means that implies that dead x comma t2. That means x is dead at the time instant t2 because t2 is greater than t2 minus t1 is greater than 150. So that means he might be dead by now. Okay, so this is how we got this representation for this sentence. We will also we will take this again, and then we have some proofs for this one. So we'll take this again in the, you have a class, students, now another class, I think. Okay, fine. So let's stop here and we'll continue in the 2 o'clock class. We have another class at 2 o'clock today, so we'll continue it in that class. Okay, Divya, have you taken the class? Okay, Divya, are you there? Okay, so Divya, please mail the attendance to me and we will continue it at 2 o'clock. Fine? Okay, thank you, students. Thank you, all of you.